Hal here, and I just want to take a minute to talk a little bit about Onyx. Been using it now for about a year, deer hunting, moose hunting, turkey hunting, all of that, and really come to really like it. I like the satellite imagery mainly because I can locate hidden fields, for turkey hunting, the bogs for moose hunting. You can tell the different stage of cuts up here in the big woods for deer, whether it's clear cuts, select cuts, see the skid roads, and it's really a big help. I found coming out at night, it's can really tell you like the easiest way to get out, if you got a couple miles, a couple hours to walk out. And so anyways, got the app on my phone, got the chip in my GPS, and I'm good to go. So not only that, it's used by 4,600 game wardens across the country, which is pretty incredible, and Bureau of Land Management, Forest Service, wildlife biologists, and all that. They all use it, so I guess it's something you ought to be using too. So anyways, go to onx.com and you punch in the promo code BWB, and you're going to get a 20% discount. Good hunting.
This is the Big Woods Bucks podcast. Come explore the big woods and timber in North America with your host, Maine master guide and deer tracking expert Hal Blood. Listen to Hal and co-hosts Lee Libby and Joe Cruzy as they unlock the secrets of big woods whitetails. Each episode will provide valuable insights in the tried and true system Hal has used for the last 40 years to scout, locate, and hunt mature big woods bucks. Listen and laugh as the crew discusses Hal's legendary adventures and learn how to apply a lifetime's worth of lessons from the big woods to your own hunting and outdoor adventures.
Welcome to the Big Woods Bucks podcast. I'm your host, Hal Blood, and we're sitting over here in the lovely Rangeley, Maine, with Lee Libby.
Howdy.
And Joe Cruzy.
Hello.
My co-host. And welcome today, and we've got our Maine deer biologist, head deer biologist, standing by to talk about what's going on in the deer world here in Maine, and learn a few things. He's been doing some studies and stuff lately, and I'm kind of anxious to hear what he's got to say about our Maine deer herd. So welcome, Nathan Beaver from Maine Fish and Wildlife.
Thanks, Hal. Yeah, I'm coming at you today from Hudson, Maine, in my lovely new home.
Nice.
Got a new home?
Yes, sir. Been here since the end of October.
Yeah.
Where'd you get the furniture?
Well, we actually don't have a whole lot.
Wow, that's good.
We had one couch in our apartment, which made it here, and got a new bed and a new table, and that's not all we need, I think.
Yep. Nate, are you in the house? How many bars you got on your phone? Because you're breaking up over here.
You on your speakerphone?
I am. I can take that off if that'd be better for you.
Yeah. Try taking that off.
It's going to suck holding that phone, but
go ahead again.
Back to my home?
Oh,
yeah,
there
you go.
That's much better.
That's what it is.
Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, I moved in at the end of October. Not a whole lot of furniture. Kind of low maintenance, I suppose. We got a table so we don't look like total schmucks when we have visitors. And I got a couch and a bed.
Is that all it takes? Is all it takes is a table?
I was going to say, how can you look like a schmuck with a brand new home?
It's got to have nice. It's gonna have nice chairs. We've got nicely upholstered chairs with it, and that kind of does it.
That's what makes the difference.
Well, Lee said he'll be taking orders here pretty quick. So
yeah, we better get on the list. We're about 8 weeks out right now on furniture, but we could give you a good deal.
I believe it.
So what I want to talk a little bit about, among other things, is I watched that deer study you're doing with Irving up north there, and collaring the deer in the yards and seeing where they go and how far they travel. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. That's a project that started with my predecessor about 6 years ago or so. I think December 2014, January 2015 was their first year. And it's kind of changed quite a bit over time as the project has changed hands and more people have gotten involved. So it's really evolved quite a bit. But we're currently collaring deer in 4 study sites. One is based in Wildlife Management District 1. The center of that study site for us was the Ben Glacier Deer Yard south of the town of Allagash. And then pretty recently we added a study site in District 5, just northeast of Baxter State Park. And then we're also trapping deer in District 6 that originally started around Ashland and kind of spread through the district later on. And then earlier on in the project, we were also marking deer in District 17 based around kind of the Dexter, Corinna, Corinth area. To date, we've collared somewhere between 250 and 260 unique deer. We're just marking adult does, and if we have extra collars, fawns as well, and just kind of monitoring their fates, trying to determine what's killing deer, what their movements look like, and eventually we'll be able to use our collar data to get a better understanding of how winter severity impacts winter mortality rates.
What do you collaring, Nathan? Are you doing just does, or are you doing bucks also?
We're doing just adult does. If we get to a point later in the season where it looks like we're going to have some extra collars sitting around, we'll also collar fawns, but we have not collared adult bucks.
Yeah. When you're going to come over to Jackman and do some of this stuff?
To be honest with you, I'm hoping we're done with the study soon, so not a lot of time left to do that.
I get you.
This was originally supposed to be a 3-year project, and we'll be going on year 7 next year, so I'm itching to be done with it.
So what's the main, the key things you've been finding out from this?
In terms of causes of mortality, that's something that's been really interesting to look at. Anytime one of our GPS collars sits motionless for, I believe it's 4 hours, it sends us a text message or an email that says, this collar hasn't moved in a while, you should probably come check it out. And so we'll go and try to determine what happened to the deer. And it's been pretty variable by study site what the leading causes of mortality have been. Not surprisingly, in our more big woods study sites, we've seen a lot more coyote predation and malnutrition or death to natural causes. And then in the more developed areas, we've seen still some coyote kills, but a lot more deer vehicle collision and hunter harvest.
Yep. Makes sense.
So
we have actually had a couple of cat kills I'll mention too, because a lot of people don't necessarily think of that. But we've had to date, I believe, 8 total cat kills, bobcat or lynx. So probably more than people would guess.
Yeah, I was surprised about lynx, I guess, but I know the bobcats do. The guys that hunt bobcats over the years, they said sometimes they're worse than coyotes because they'll kill one and they'll kill another one the next day or something because they want a warm meal, you know.
We have had seemingly kind of really adept deer killing cats or repeat offenders, so to speak. We had one cat kill and we put up a camera and got another cat kill from probably the same lynx the year after. So I'm guessing that some cats just develop a proficiency for it, and whenever they can, we'll take a deer.
Yeah.
What about bears?
We haven't had any adult deer killed by bears. I suspect that's really, really rare, but their impact on neonates, really young newborn fawns, is probably pretty high. We don't have any collared neonates to look at that, though. But I would guess between bears and coyotes, they're probably pretty close in terms of impacts on really young fawns.
Yeah.
So you were last time you were on with us, you were really just starting. I think you really had just come to town at that point. So I'm sure you've learned a lot about the differences of deer up here and kind of the idiosyncrasies they have.
Yeah, I think I had only been on a few months the first time I was on this podcast.
Yeah.
And now I'm getting close to year 3. I know a slightly bigger fraction of what there is to know about deer in Maine now, but it's better than when I started, so it's pretty good, I guess.
Yeah.
So there's no effort to. I know we talked about it last time, and it's something we all want to see, and obviously you guys aren't going to do it, but the movement of bucks, especially during the rut, I've read about other studies in other places where they've done that, just seeing how far they travel and everything. So it's more about just the health of the herd and mortality, as opposed to just watching deer movement and seeing how far they go and that sort of thing.
That is a part of it. We're more interested, I guess, in seasonal migrations when we're talking about movement rather than dispersal or rut movements. But we've had some does move over 50 miles during their seasonal migration. And in northern Maine, a movement of 15 to 25 miles between summer and winter range is pretty common. John Sewell, he's the Penobscot Nation, or Passamaquoddy Nation big game biologist. He's got a collaring study as well, and he had a deer this year that made a 100-mile plus seasonal migration. So some very significant movements in some of our Maine deer. 100 miles is certainly an outlier. 50 miles was an outlier, but it does happen.
Where was that one?
I believe most of his collared deer are in Indian Township, and then this one migrated actually north of our study site in District 5, which is just northeast of Baxter. So he had a deer from down east move north of Baxter.
Holy smokes.
That thing's lost.
Wild. Yeah.
I know someone had sent me some of the mapping in the past just showing how far they went, and I think the study I saw, the deer they were collared in Parkman and ended up right up around Parlin, which I think that was about 50 miles, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was quite a trek, and it was interesting that to me they basically went up and back exactly the same route. You know, they did like a round
they
trip.
have very high fidelity to their migration routes, and if you look at them on like a satellite image, it's not always obvious how they're navigating. Sometimes it's just through the middle of really uniform cover. You have no idea how they're following that route, but they do.
Yeah. Huh. Pretty interesting creatures.
So I know that I've seen a lot of stuff online. When it first came out about the number of doe permits or any deer permits that were being issued this year. What triggered that? Could you tell us a little about the behind the scenes on that and how you guys get to those points on issuing any deer permits?
Yep. This year we are recommending close to 110,000 permits statewide, which is a record by quite a large margin. And what's really driving that is this sort of accumulating effect of the last several decades where we've continuously failed to meet our doe harvest objectives statewide. We've on average been over the last decade about 20 to 25% short of the doe harvest that we were shooting for. And so there's kind of this snowballing effect where you're failing to harvest enough does continuously, and eventually you just need to ramp up numbers to get to the numbers you actually want to reach. It's, I think, no coincidence that the one time when we actually met our doe harvest objective over the last 15 years was in 2018, when we issued a then record number of 84,000 and change permits. So it's just kind of takes aggressive action to actually achieve the levels of doe harvest we want. In addition to that, this year, we also had a pretty mild winter, which kind of compounded things even more than in 2018. So it's sort of mild winter impacts, continuously under-harvesting does, and then there are some areas as well where, though it's not the primary driver in our decision-making, we're seeing some skewed sex ratios, a little bit high on doe-to-buck ratios in some areas. And if it's an area of the state where we want to decrease numbers, then we definitely want to see those ratios be a bit lower.
So what is it that drives, you say you're coming up short on your goals and the numbers. How does the state reach their goals? What is it you're looking for, and how are those numbers established?
We look at deer recruitment for one thing. We use lactation data and embryo counts and things to kind of estimate per doe how many fawns is a doe raising and getting to an age where it can breed. And then we can kind of determine how many of our does can we afford to lose while maintaining a stable population. And so there is a lot of sex ratio stuff in there where we're looking at where we're currently at and the sex ratio we would theoretically be at if the population were stable. And then it's just trying to steer the sex ratio within our harvest to a point where we can get to a place where our population sex ratio is stable. That's probably not super clear, but I haven't found in my 3 years yet a very clear way of describing it. But maybe as an example of the recruitment part, at least, if we have, say we're looking at 100 does and our recruitment data suggests that those 100 does are going to be able to bring 25 fawn females up until the hunting season to where they're kind of recruited into the adult doe population, that would give us 125 females, which would mean that we could lose 25% of or 20% of those, and we would still have that same 100 does that we started with. So that's kind of a way of looking at what you're adding into the population and then how much you can afford to lose to stay at a stable place.
And so I guess what determines that stable? What is a stable place? So what's the estimated population right now?
Though the population estimates and abundance are not really an integral part of our management system, I want to make that clear, because we don't dedicate a ton of resources towards coming up with really robust abundance estimates. But I would estimate that there's currently around 300,000 deer in Maine.
That's more than they used to tell us all the time. We used to average 200, 250, I think, years ago.
Yeah, we're definitely up over the last couple of years. Jerry Levine, he was the deer biologist three biologists ago, I think.
Yeah,
he ran a model called HARPOP. It was a sex age kill model, and it used some coding that was eventually obsolete, so we no longer use that. So modeling techniques have kind of changed over time and by biologists. I'm currently using a sex age kill model to provide estimates, but those population estimates don't really factor into our management a lot. It's more for kind of benchmarking and to satisfy people's curiosity.
So what is I mean, you basically just look at the recruitment and how many deer are being born and use that to base where it's going in the future and how you want to control it?
That's kind of a way of looking at it. We look at basically where we're currently at in terms of dose per buck, sex ratios, and then whether that needs to go up or down to determine or to reach what our goal in the area is. So I guess underlying everything, we have to look at each district and develop some idea of whether we want to stabilize the deer population in the district, increase it, or decrease it. And that decision used to be based on density objectives in our old big game plan. That was removed in our more current big game plan, which took effect in 2016. So it's much more of a subjective sort of process now, determining what you want the population to do in a district, go up or down or stabilize. And it's based more on regional input and deer health, deer human conflicts, things like that. But there's not a discrete number anymore that we're aiming towards. It's more of a kind of a nebulous goal, looking at all these different inputs and determining kind of where we think we're at relative to where we and where the public wants to be in a district.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people, when they posted this about having 110 or whatever thousand doe permits this year, there's a lot of people that kick and scream that are going to kill every deer in the state now and all that. They don't get it, but I personally think, like our zone, I live in 8, and I see there's like 25 permits for does again in that zone, which I think is excessively low personally, because what we get going on in the North Woods, is the deer herd revolves around the winters anyways. You can't stockpile them no matter what, because you'll have all of a sudden, the deer herd's building up and you got lots of does, lots of deer in the woods. In one winter, they're half gone. I always look at that as it's kind of a waste of the resource, because there's no sense to let it build up like that, because it's not going to last. So that's just my feeling on it. I don't know what you think about that, but
yeah, Maine's tricky like that. I think there's two schools of thought, and they're both equally loud. And one is that killing does is a crime and we should never kill does, and the other is that we can't stockpile them and should kill more. So it's definitely tricky to kind of reach a middle ground there.
Yeah, but wouldn't you say that 25 doe permits in the whole zone 8 would be a pretty low, considering I think it's what do you have now? You figure for every take so many permits. Well, I think used to be they used to figure 6 permits to kill one antlerless. Is that how you figure it still?
In District 8, it's about 3 permits. We're estimating 3 to 4 permits to take a doe now. It varies quite a bit around the state, though. There's districts in the south where we got to issue 15 to 20 permits to shoot one doe at this point. Diminishing returns, I think, where we've kind of reached a cap in terms of hunter interest and hunter participation, and it doesn't really matter if we issue 8,000 or 1 million permits. We're probably going to achieve the same level of doe harvest, because we've kind of reached the number of hunters we're going to get that are interested.
Gotta let the kids shoot too.
Gotta let me
Yeah,
shoot too.
Oh, now he's
we
going to talk.
discussed a number of different options along those lines, but there are some districts in southern Maine where if things continue as they have the last few years, we're going to have to explore other options to incentivize doe harvest because the current system, it's just not cutting it.
No,
Now
because
you can get more than one bonus permit, to be clear on the multiple does thing that you just mentioned. In some of these districts, if there's a ton more permits than there are applicants, everything that's left over gets rolled over into bonus permits. And I think this year there will probably be some districts where people are getting multiple bonus permits.
why don't they just open it up to everybody just can shoot a doe, one buck and one doe? Because
Yeah, we have discussed that as well. The concern about that is it's hard to walk back from that. And also, there's a tendency for the legislature to get involved if you try to make major tweaks to bag limits. And a lot of these things have to be changed through the legislature.
right.
And when you need to do that, it's out of our hands. We can't do it through department rulemaking. So it gets tricky when you involve folks at the Capitol.
I just see seems like such an opportunity to, kill two birds with one stone because we have the issue with hunter numbers going back down overall and getting kids involved. And, it just seems like along those lines, it sounds like you guys are doing that, talking about it is getting the kids involved. The bonus permits are good, but if you did I feel like if you just do a law that kids can shoot one on Youth Day and one during the season or something along those lines. But like you said, if it's got to go to the legislature and all that, it's a lot harder to get that stuff done.
Very true. And I think historically, when it's been something that deals with the legislature, if it comes to a point where you're looking at offering harvest opportunities to just specific demographics and not all people, I think the tendency has been to prefer options that allow everyone to be involved rather than just specific groups.
Yeah, that's why I say you just open it up to a buck and a doe down there. See, I'm an old timer, so I grew up down in southern Maine. Started hunting in the 60s and in the 70s. And there wasn't a lot of deer in southern Maine, quite frankly. I mean, there was, when you got near the coast in a lot of places around Portland, Falmouth, Scarborough, there was very, very few. I mean, it was a big deal to even see a deer track in the woods. And you had to get further, like inland a little bit, out towards Sebago Lake and the western mountains, and there was more deer there. But it was either sex right up until the mid-'80s, and nobody ever worried about the deer population. There was always seemed like the same amount of deer all the time down there.
And there was more hunters.
And there was more hunters. And
nobody worse winters.
Yeah, nobody worried. Yeah, we had bad winters in southern Maine back then. Nobody worried about not being any deer,
Yeah, on the buck and a doe thing that you mentioned, functionally that's kind of how it is in some districts. In WMD 24, for example, we have so many permits and so few applicants that literally everyone who applies for an any deer permit is going to get a bonus permit last year, and I assume this year as well. And that's usually the case. So it's functionally kind of everyone can take a buck and a doe. It's just an extra step for us.
Is that like bows only zone, or no? You can shotgun, or
nope.
That's rifle.
A lot of District 24 is pretty built up, like around Portland and such, and there are local firearms ordinances that will keep you from hunting with a gun in parts of that district. But the district as a whole is open to whatever.
What about Antifa permits? When are those going to be available?
Not familiar with what exactly those allow you to do.
Right.
So these, but for the most part, an antlerless permit doesn't entitle you to a buck and a doe. It's just in those exclusive areas, right?
A regular any deer permit is an either sex permit, a buck or a doe.
Right.
Then if there's more permits than there are applicants, the extra permits are divvied out to applicants as bonus permits, which let you take an additional antlerless deer.
Gotcha.
And then we do have a few deer management subunits in District 25 and 26. We have one, and those receive a small allotment of bonus permits. And then expanded archery is its whole own thing. You can buy all the antlerless permits you want in expanded archery areas.
Right.
and an additional buck permit as well.
Yeah.
It's just hard. There's a lot of restricted land use down there too. You know, you can't just go plop up a tree stand anywhere. I think
Right, and that's
a
why
big
it's expanded
problem.
archery. That's a lot of it. It's hard to get access there, so we do everything we can to remove deer. We are proposing expansion to 4 of our expanded archery areas this year. So, listeners, if you're interested in expanded archery hunting, be on the lookout for that.
So you were talking about the buck to doe ratios. There's not one certain goal that you like to look at. You say you change that for every district?
Yeah, there's not a magic number, and it's not really steering towards a number. It's more steering the number that we're at towards a direction that's going to get us towards an increase, a decline, or stabilize. And that's going to vary quite a bit by district. If you're in a district where there's very little buck hunting, you're probably going to have much different ratios than very little doe hunting, rather. You're going to have much different ratios than in an area where there's quite a lot of doe hunting opportunity.
What's the general status? I know way up north, you know, the deer obviously took a huge hit up there a few years back. What's the overall health of the deer up in like North Maine woods area?
In northern Maine, I think doing a little better than perhaps 2 years ago, but as you alluded to, it's super cyclical up there. It's always going to be cyclical. It was once upon a time before budworm, before super efficient logging, before coyotes arrived. The conditions were great for deer up there, and there was a small period of time when they did really well, but the conditions that we had at that time can't really be replicated right now. So it's always going to be kind of a struggle for deer in northern Maine, and it's definitely still the case now. With the increase of supplemental feeding or artificial feeding, though, dynamics have changed quite a bit anyways, where deer is sort of ending up in towns in a lot of northern Maine these days, and a lot of the deer wintering cover we have left is empty of deer. So it's a different landscape than it was 50 years ago. And what we had back then can't really be returned to. It's just kind of working with what we have now.
Right. I'll give you an observation I had from the last couple of seasons, especially last season. In 2018 there, we had considerable snow, and we was worried for the deer. I think we had up around Jackman, like 150 inches or something. And we were worried about the deer, and because a bunch of us are in the woods all winter coyote hunting with the hounds and stuff, so we're seeing the deer in the deer yards every day almost, or quite frequently. And even though we had a lot of snow that winter, the deer actually pretty much all made it. I mean, the coyotes always are going to get a few, but there wasn't any like mortality naturally. And even in the spring it hung on, you know, they couldn't get out of there till early May. Even all the little fawns were in good shape, and they all left. And then that fall, which would have been last fall to hunt those deer, we noticed there was lots of deer around most of the places except along the Canadian border. From what I know about would say basically be from down towards Route 27 towards Eustis up all the way to,
201?
No, even up St. Orally area. The deer along the border, which are typically is an area where there's more deer per square mile, last fall there was way less. Everybody that hunts that way were seeing less deer, less tracks, and there was snow the whole season pretty much to see tracks. And my theory on that was it had to be the deer that went into Canada, because all those deer basically go to those yards in Canada. And for some reason, that winter of 2018, those deer didn't make it in Canada. And I don't know if it's the deer yards up there are overbrowsed or what it is, but it was something to do with that, because everywhere, it wasn't just one spot, it was everywhere up along the border there was considerably less deer.
That's funny. That's exactly where you sent me.
Yeah.
You told me I should head up that way and check it out. Yeah. Funny how that works, huh, Lee?
Yep. Yeah. But I don't know. I just know what I observe, and it was kind of strange that everywhere else the deer had seemed to make it good, because I have a place right on the border, and those deer, they used to actually come south to yard, and then those yards were all decimated, and the deer repopulated in that area from Canada. So now they all go to Canada to yard because they can jump the border there. Within a few miles, they're in farm country basically for the winter. And I noticed there was considerably less deer tracks in the road in the summer and the fall, and the hunters in there saw less deer than usual. So that's what I had to attribute it to, was just the yarding up in that, wherever they ended up in the winter, that bad winter. Hey, it's Hal here. I want to talk to you about a new partnership we have with Yokohama Tires. And at Big Woods Bucks, we don't take our partnerships lightly. We focus on things that we can use and can believe in and trust. And I've been running a set of the Yokohama Geolander MTs for about a month now. And over the years, we've had a lot of trouble in the woods, with gravel roads, shale roads, and flat tires and stuff. And so I tried these tires out on a moose hunt, and they worked fabulous. I had no problems with them, and still testing them. But the thing I like, too, is I made a trip to New York, and they're for a mud tire, they're extremely quiet on the road. Probably the most quiet ones I've had for an aggressive tread tire. And so we're going to keep at testing them here, but I think they're going to be the ticket. I've used dozens of different tires over the years, and these look like they're going to be the ticket. So anyways, the tires are made right here in the USA, down in Virginia. All the light tires, light truck and car tires. There's like 51 sizes available. And they also have a Geolander XAT as a new tire that it's a little less aggressive, like more of an all-season radial. So anyways, check out their website, Yokohama Tire, and see if it's something you can use. Hey, Hal here. Just want to take a minute to talk about the hunting club. And you can join by going right online at bigwoodsbucks.com. But anyways, I've got all my information is going in there, and it's a place where you can get together and look at my films, tips, writings, and all of that. And the best part is there's forums for you to communicate with, the rest of the club members, talk about Big Wood stuff and all of that. So anyways, $36 a year, cheaper than getting a Starbucks once a day. So join up, and hope you see you're on there.
So what is your you alluded to the feeding, the supplemental feeding. What's your position on that now, Nathan, that you've had a few years to look at it and soak it in?
We had a couple of bills. They were specifically related to baiting, but we dug into the feeding issue as well at this most recent legislative session. And I prepared a report on baiting and feeding in Maine, and that's on our website if anyone's interested in reading it. But historically, our messaging on feeding has been pretty mixed. We've encouraged people not to do it, but if they ask, we told them how to do it. And I think that confused a lot of people, and it made a lot of people maybe ignore some of our advice. So our messaging on feeding is, I think, going to evolve in the coming years. We're going to kind of get away from telling people don't feed. That doesn't mean we endorse feeding, but we recognize that a lot of people do it. It is legal. And so we might as well provide some sort of guidance for the people that are going to do it to minimize some of the negative impacts associated with it. And so though I'm not pro-feeding by any stretch of the imagination, but I recognize that a lot of people do it, and it is legal, and it can have positive benefits, can also have negative impacts, which if you feed in a way that mitigates those, it's not going to cause as many problems. So if someone's going to get into feeding, I'm happy to kind of provide some guidance and hopefully steer them in the right way.
So there was some talk about remote, what were we talking about, Hal? Like remote deer yards, like basically man-made deer yards where it would be outside of these towns in areas that would sustain deer, but there'd be supplemental feeding by the state. Is there anything to that, Nate? Or?
We're actually planning some pilot projects kind of along those lanes. It's just in sort of an abstract planning sort of phase right now, but we're looking at some ways to use, two things. We're looking at potentially trying to intercept deer on their migration routes with feed and stop them in cover rather than in towns. And so we might look at a project doing that, and then also using feed to move deer from sort of feed lots or feed yard areas into adjacent cover where they'd feed in cover instead of these kind of barnyard areas.
I like
So we are
that
looking
idea.
at some different projects, and I don't necessarily know that they'll be successful or not. I don't know, but I think the knowledge of this can work and this can't work is valuable in its own right. So I think it's useful to try some different things. The old try to establish cooperative agreements with big companies and preserve yards that way for the last 50 years has had some positive impacts, but on the whole hasn't exactly saved northern deer or whatever you want to say. So it's worth trying some different things, and it may or may not work, but we'll learn some stuff hopefully.
Yeah, I know they're having good luck up in Allagash there. They're getting those round bales of alfalfa, and that's good winter deer feed for them, and they're having real good luck with that.
Been in contact with the ACCA up there. They've been doing quite a bit of feeding and food plots and that sort of thing, and we're going to try to do a better job of documenting what they're doing and provide some recommendations on how they can improve their work up there. And if we can kind of document how to feed and feed well and provide that to people, I think it'll go a long way to mitigating some of the negative impacts associated with feeding. There's definitely still some concerns there when you've got piles of deer concentrated in little areas, but there are things you can do to make those negative impacts a little less worse. And so hopefully we can better document those things and provide info to people.
Yeah, I know around our area in Jackman, they're not concentrated like a lot of deer in like a field or a lot. It seems to be more spread out because it's basically completely around the lake in town, Big Wood, that's the center of town. And the whole peripheral of town is where the deer come to. But they don't get fed in big areas. It's like somebody might have 10 deer coming out behind their house, and it's still, most of them are all fed basically in the woods or the edge of it, out in the edge of their backyard or something like that. Mm-hmm. And there's 10 coming here and 20 coming there and 30 coming somewhere else. So it's not all the deer coming to one place. So they're not really concentrated any more than they would be in a regular deer yard, because they're actually staying in the woods and yarding, and they feed there too, but they get the supplemental stuff, in the evenings, and you can tell it really helps them out around our area, because they don't have anywhere else to go anymore. There just isn't. Right. There isn't a place for them to be other than around town,
And that's definitely an important part of mitigating some of those negative impacts, is spreading the feed out. And if you're going to feed, don't put giant piles of grain in a little trough or something. I recognize some people do that and like to watch deer, and that's a big thing for people who feed. They want to watch the deer, but that feed should be spread out, should be rotated around the landscape.
Yeah.
It should be out away from the roads, and you got to be careful about what you feed too.
Yeah, the does just kind of beat up the smaller ones, and they don't eat at all. So
Hal and I know someone in Jackman that he goes out every single day and gets cedar.
Yeah,
and he does a great job. It's a lot of work, but he gets a load every day.
Yeah, and he's retired, and he goes out with either his snowmobile or his Jeep, and he cuts cedar limbs. He's got permission from the landowners to cut the lower limbs on the cedars along the road, the new cedars growing. And he gets a great big bundle. I don't know how many pounds. It must be, I bet you it's 150 pounds or something of cedar limbs.
It's a lot of work.
Every day he goes and gets it and feeds it to the deer in his backyard, it's right on a stream, and then it's all a regular deer yard on the north side of town. But he says he has usually about 40 to 45 deer come into his yard.
Anytime you can provide food that the deer are already adapted to and are already used to digesting, that's great. Good job.
How big of an area would it take to hold 1,000 or 2,000 deer, Nate?
In
a wooded
proper
area,
winter cover without artificial feed, or
with artificial feed. I mean, would you need 1,000? Would you need an acre per deer? Would you need 2 acres per deer?
With artificial feed?
Yes, with artificial feed.
Oof, I don't know. I haven't given that a whole lot of thought, but that's a lot of deer. You want them to be pretty spread out because they don't just sit in one place either. They're moving around all day and they're probably bedding together, and really having a pile of deer in one little spot is not ideal for a lot of reasons.
Right. So you'd need a couple thousand acres for, if you had, I don't know how many come to Rangeley, but a lot.
In a natural deer wintering area, you might have 200 or more deer per square mile in just natural wintering cover. Well, granted, a square mile is 640 acres.
Yeah.
So, thousands of acres is probably appropriate for 1,000 deer.
Yeah.
I know watching, we talked about it a lot before, but in the Forks where a couple of years ago, where the roadkill was so high, there was over 100 in one winter. And areas like that, I think, are perfect for kind of what the remote feeding sites that Lee had mentioned and you talked about in that situation. Because the Forks, I think, is one of those areas. Gordon's been feeding them forever, and the deer that he feeds, they're close to the road, but it's really the ones across the street by the river and stuff. The deer are crossing all the time, and it just drags them across there. And it's all the same reason. Everyone wants them in their yard, and everyone wants to see them. But boy, that's taken a toll. Last year was great though because of the winter that we had.
Yeah, there wasn't hardly any down there.
I couldn't get a coyote bait to save my life. Usually you drive through any day and pick one up.
Yeah.
And this year I had to wait quite a while.
Yeah, we have that in Rangeley. We have a lot of deer car collisions, and especially early in December when they start to file in. The dumb ones haven't figured it out yet. And there's a lot of deer that get hit.
So do you get out much and hunt, Nathan?
I haven't been successful yet in Maine, but I have tried. We moved into our house at the end of October, so I didn't really get to scout or set up for rifle season, but I tried. I failed to see a single deer on my property, but I know they're there. I did bow hunt in Orrington the year before. I'm not a good bow hunter. I shake too much when I get excited, but I do try.
We have an honest biologist anyway.
Yeah.
I tell you, being a biologist does not make you a better hunter. I'll tell you that right now.
Did you think it would?
Nah, I had pretty realistic expectations and understood that I was a bad hunter to begin with, and that probably wasn't going to change. But you still got to prepare. You still got to be lucky, and it takes a lot of things that are not improved just by being a deer biologist.
Yeah. Well, I think when you go to school for biology, a lot of what you're learning is the biology of the deer more than really the habits of the deer, right?
Right. Being able to tell you 5 or 6 different scent glands on a deer's body really isn't going to help me shoot one.
Yeah, you're always trying to figure out how to make them live, not die.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you another observation that we had, from coyote hunting in the winter. I told you last time we talked about, we got a pretty good crew now hunting the coyotes with the hounds, and it's really, it does make a big difference. I mean, I used to read the stuff about you can't control the coyotes because they're going to have more babies. None of that's true because we've got the coyotes around Jackman really held at bay where they're not having hardly any impact on the deer around town anymore. I think this past winter, it was bad conditions. We didn't kill as many as we'd like to have because of we'd always get snow, and then we get a crust, and it was hard running. But we killed, I think, 32 this year. I think the year before was 37, and the year before was 48 or something. But there's places that it's void of coyotes now. I mean, you might have one passing through, but we used to be able to go out in one area every morning and pick from 5 or 6 different tracks to start running. In some of those areas now, you make a big loop for several miles, and you don't even see a coyote track. And what I think it's done is, just my observation again, is because there's so few coyotes in the deer yards now, because that's where we go and hunt. We drive them out of there, and even if we don't kill everyone, once you run them out and you run them 5 miles away, they don't come back for a while. Now the deer are a lot more relaxed. You can see it. They're not as spooky. They don't get chased every night like they did with the coyotes before. And I think that's helping their survival in the spring. Like I was telling you about 2018, we had so much snow, but they weren't getting chased around, so they were healthier to get through the spring. And that's just my observation as a layman, you know.
Sure. Yeah, I think at a very localized scale, intensive coyote harvest can definitely have positive impacts if your goal is to benefit deer. On the landscape as a whole, I think achieving the level of harvest you'd need to make an impact on, say, a whole district, I don't know that that's sustainable, but in small localized areas, you can definitely have an impact.
Yeah, what we noticed is the coyotes, they travel long distances too. So as we know they're territorial. So if we take out, say there was beginning of the season, there might be 8 or 10 coyotes that have come down, followed the deer into the yards. If we kill those coyotes, there might not be any there for a week or two. Then all of a sudden, 2 or 3 more will show up. Well, those coyotes sometimes have come from 10 miles or 15 miles away overnight. They walk down the road or something and they get there. So we're not only controlling the ones from there, but I think we're controlling the coyote population for a 20-mile radius of town, which is pretty big, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no doubt it makes an impact with you guys and Jackman, and Shane's been hard on them for a long time down in the Forks, and it's growing. I mean, you see it all the time now with social media. There's houndsmen that are coming and coming from out of state, and because all they want to do is run their dogs. They don't care what it's after. And
it's a good sport.
It's great. Yeah, it's a great winter time. I never am able to enjoy it, but maybe one day.
So now, Nate, you can go around in the wintertime on your snow machine anywhere, and you don't see anywhere very many coyote tracks until you get like up in the North Maine woods where not as many people coyote hunt. There is a group that hunts up around the Pittston Farm to the northeast Cary, but when you get up north of that, you'll find more coyote tracks again because those coyotes aren't getting hunted.
Yep. People are going to remove them where the people are, not necessarily where the coyotes are.
Yeah. Well, most of them, they want to hunt where the deer yards are to help the deer, you know. So, but anyways, we're doing our best.
Is that well recognized within the state in your planning?
What's that?
Well, just, it seems like, like what Hal was talking about, running coyotes, it's good on the deer and saves them, but then we got to give out some doe permits. Knock them down a little bit. I mean, I guess you guys more look at the overall picture.
Yeah, there's a lot of things like different causes of mortality, like coyote predation, that aren't addressed specifically, but it all kind of is baked into a larger picture.
Yeah, so let's get back to Zone 8, 25 doe permits, or antlerless permits.
And if it takes 4 permits to harvest 1 deer, so technically that's what, 5 deer? 6 deer.
6 to 8 deer we're going to kill.
Yeah, when you get to some of these districts where it's really low numbers, it's splitting hairs, and it's not necessarily we think 25 permits it's perfect. It's more we think it's appropriate to harvest a low level of deer, and we'd like youths to be able to hunt deer, and that requires issuing any deer permits. So 25 is kind of an arbitrary low bar that we've set for districts where we want to have some level of doe harvest and some level of opportunities for kids and October archery hunters, but we want that overall impact to be low. There are actually a couple districts too. I don't know off the top of my head that 8's one of them. I don't think so. But there are some districts where youth day hunting alone results in quite a large doe kill. So we have to be careful in some of those districts where just having even theoretically 1 any deer permit, which would allow youth day harvesting, could mean 30 to 40, 50 does harvested. So some districts we have to be a little more careful than others. I don't think 8 was one of those, though.
No, there's plenty of deer around for the kids and stuff to shoot more does when we're shooting, because, again, we're going to have another bad winter one of these years, and half of them are going to be gone again. Hey, everyone. Hal here. Just wanted to take a minute to talk a minute about the Woodman Arms muzzle loader. We got them all set on the website to build your own or buy your Big Woods Bucks model, either one you want to do. But anyways, we've tested it a lot, and I can honestly say it's the most accurate muzzle loader on the market, best to carry in the big woods or anywhere else at 5.5 pounds, you can't go wrong with it. So get on there and check it out.
Hey guys, Joe here. Wanted to take a few minutes to talk about Lake Parlin Lodge. We're a 4-season lodge located just south of Jackman. We've got cabins, lodge rooms, mini lodge. We're a big snowmobile destination in the winter, full restaurant, bar, all the amenities that you need for your trip. Open all obviously through the summer, right on the lake. Kayaks, canoes, all included with the cabin. We also do a lot of weddings, so if you're looking for a destination wedding, we can do a wedding up to 200 people. And of course, we've got our hunting season, moose season, deer season. So check us out. We're at lakeparlinlodge.com. Has there been any significant changes or increases since the age was lowered below 10, or is that pretty much you don't really see a difference?
I'm not aware of any. I haven't really looked into that. I'm not even sure when that change was made. I don't recall it being during my tenure, so I probably overlooked it.
I would assume that was more of an opportunity thing to get more kids into it as opposed to a management tool, but you would think more people hunting, right?
Yeah, there's quite a few youths under 10 that have shot deer now, and historically it was 10. I think it's only been, it might have been right around when you came here, Nate, because it's only been no more than 3 years that they changed that law.
Yeah, not sure when exactly that took effect.
Yeah, that was I know when that happened, it was kind of a controversial thing. I was all in favor of it, seeing it in the South and how it is. Yeah, right. No one can, not everyone's not going to agree on anything. So yeah. It was. I think it's a great law. I think it's better for parents to decide when their kids are ready than the state. But I think it's probably, there's always issues that come along with it. But I think overall, when you can get kids out there, it's always a positive.
Yeah, not just kids too, but I think there's kind of a whole lost generation between ages 20-something and 30-something where, for whatever reason, hunting just never caught on. So, kids are definitely important to get involved, but I think there's a whole lot of years beyond that, up into the 30s, where there's just not a lot of people hunting. I think our average hunter in Maine is like 50 years old or something like that.
Yeah, it's what you call a dying breed, huh?
Very slowly throughout the country, it's pretty consistent. Hunter demographics are getting a bit older, and participation is relatively steady in Maine, if maybe a slight decrease, but a lot of other states are seeing much heavier declines in hunting numbers.
Yeah, well, our Big Woods Bucks team's trying to contribute to that, get people interested in it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, that the point you just made, I never really thought about it much, but when you said it, it's true. I'm thinking about people I know and my family, nephews and stuff, that they're getting into hunting now. They have to be brought into it. But yeah, you're right. There's a whole age group there that really has I don't
been
know if
cheated.
They were cheated.
Parents,
they weren't exposed, or there was other things going on when they were younger that they were interested in, like sports or video games or some crap like that. And then once they
some crap like that.
Well, we all played basketball,
sports
and
aren't all crap.
soccer,
but video games are all crap, and that's just my opinion. Okay, I don't want to get a bunch of hate mail about video games because it happens every time. I'm sure we're going to hear about it. Lee's Antifa comment. So
I hope so. Can't wait for them.
When I was in school, they were always trying to get me to play sports, and I tried it a couple times until it come the first day of bird season or something, and I skipped out to go hunting. That sports didn't fit in really with my lifestyle.
We've all seen you run, Hal. We know it wasn't that.
That's mean.
Oh yeah. I wanted to ask you another thing there, Nate. I don't know if you got a grasp on that or something too. Is always people are always asking about what the buck to doe ratio is. And I know it's different throughout the state, but I think it's probably, if you took northern Maine, in the North Maine woods or the northern part of the state, that's probably pretty uniform, I would think. And do you have any idea what it is?
Yeah, I would say northern Maine is pretty uniform, somewhere between 1.5 to 2.5. Southern and central Maine a bit higher, kind of in the 2 to 3 adult does per adult buck range. I want to go on a little soapbox here just for a moment. I've heard claims from some folks, and it's fine. You see what you see, but if you think there's 10 adult does per adult buck on the landscape, that's pretty much mathematically impossible. Outside of a deer pen, the most adult does per adult buck you're probably ever going to find in the wild, just mathematically talking about mortality rates, is probably about 5 to 1. So it's really important when you observe things like that to understand what you're looking at, which is adult does per adult bucks. This does not count fawns. You need to account for the fact that doe fawn groups are much more social, and you'll oftentimes see a group which will recount coming into the yard several times. Bucks tend to be more secretive, less gregarious rather. There's a lot of things that factor into that, but 10 to 15 adult does per adult buck does not exist in the wild in this country. You may see it around a hay bale or something if you got one in your yard, if there's a big doe fawn group there, but that's my little soapbox for the day. I have to go on that.
Just so you know, we want you on the soapbox. You're the the expert here, so that's a good point, because you do see that it's people, like you said, they observe, and it's easy to do that. You see a bunch of does all the time, and you think it's way out of whack, but.
So I guess what you meant is that you're saying in northern Maine, it's for every 1.5 does, there's a buck. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, 1.5 to 2.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's what I've always thought. And like you said, people think there's more because even in the woods in the fall, they see all kinds of does, but they don't see many bucks. But the bucks are
a lot of people are looking out their window at their bird feeder, or they're sitting on a migration trail watching a big doe group walk by, and it's just not quite representative of what's really out there.
No, and because we've talked about this before, that there's lots of the bucks that don't even go to the deer yards. I mean, especially the ones that we have around Jackman. I mean, it's 90% does, I would say, and maybe like yearling bucks, but it's 90% does.
A big thick buck can winter almost anywhere he wants. He might be up on a ridge with hardly any cover, and he'll be probably fine.
Yeah, they walk around, and I've found a lot of them, they stay right in around where the moose are, and the moose are keeping the trails tromped out, and the bucks will walk right in them trails with the moose. Yeah. So,
as long as we're on sex ratios, can I pitch something very quickly?
Sure.
Yeah.
I put together a little citizen science project. It's not online yet, but we're trying to get a little bit better recruitment data, or kind of a secondary source of recruitment data. So I put together this little citizen science project called Maine Deer Spy. It's going to be on our website soon, but this is just kind of a pilot year to see what kind of quality data we will get and see if it'll be useful or not. But it's just an opportunity for people who like to watch deer anyway throughout the summer and early fall to record what they're seeing and provide that data to us, and hopefully get a better understanding of recruitment. Currently, when we're looking at the fawns produced by does, we have to use data like lactation rate data and embryo counts from roadkills and things. And an alternative to that is just directly observing fawn-doe ratios in the late summer, early fall. So people who like to watch deer, there will be a project on our website soon. You can go on there, log some sightings that you're looking at, and the data looks pretty much in line with what we think is reality. We will have that as a secondary source of recruitment data.
So they go to Maine Fish and Wildlife website, and there's going to be an icon like they can find pretty easily?
Yeah, it's not on there yet, but we have a species page for all the different species, and then you'll go into white-tailed deer, and then there's a little thing on the side with related links, and there will be one there called Maine Deer Spy. And they'll probably send out one of those Gov delivery emails and maybe a Facebook post or something so people know about it. This first year, I'm not really concerned about getting a ton of people involved, more just want to see what kind of quality data we'll get. If people are reporting through there that they're seeing a doe with 35 fawns, it's probably not going to be good data for us, and we won't keep doing it. But if it looks like it's well-recorded data and aligns with our understanding of reality currently, it'd be good to have that as additional data.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Real good idea. So, well, all right. Anything else you got to say before we wrap it up?
I'll throw in just a little blurb about crossbow hunting, since that's kind of new this year. I think we have a crossbow hunting fact sheet on the website, but for the next 3 years, people under 65 are going to be able to crossbow hunt. I'd look online for more info, but if that's something that interests you, I'd recommend looking up some more info on that so you can get involved.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, Nate, it's been great having you on again.
Appreciate it, Nathan.
Informative
Thanks, guys.
as usual, and I'm sure everybody listening will be get a little more informed about it. And so you think one last thing before we go, your prognosis for this deer season is probably pretty good, right?
A lot of people should have a lot of flexibility to take a doe or a buck, so no excuse for not putting something in the freezer this year. There's plenty of deer out there in southern and central Maine, and you can always find a set of tracks and get out of your truck and actually get in the woods up north, and you may find something too.
Yeah.
I think we're going to find with the price of beef these days due to COVID, there's going to be a lot more people putting deer in the
It'll be
freezer.
very interesting to see how this whole pandemic.
What's
factors into the
COVID?
hunting
COVID
season.
what?
Oh, Lee's back with us
Oh,
again.
the biggest hoax we've had in 100 years?
Don't get on that road.
yeah.
It's been a
Yep.
weird 4 months.
Yeah, I bet.
It'll all be over in November, one way or the other.
Yeah.
Guarantee
Yeah.
it.
I think it'll be over by moose season.
Yeah.
So anyways, once again, great having you, and thanks for coming on, and keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Thanks for hosting. Thanks
Take
for
care.
listening, everyone.
Take care,
See
Nate.
ya.
Take care, Nathan.
All right. Until next week. No.
Nope, we got a couple more things to cover.
Oh, yeah.
Hal's always wanting to just rush out of here. I don't know what he's got to do today.
Lee's buying lunch.
Yeah, Big Woody's
Yeah.
buying lunch.
Who's
All
got
right.
the big Woody card?
So, wanted to cover a couple things. Silent Predator is now back online. They had quite a slowdown like everyone did with COVID, but they're back cranking again. So we just wanted to remind everyone that is looking to order something that you're better off to order it sooner rather than later, because there is a 4 to 6 week wait, and we don't want you wait until late where you can't get it for the fall. So
The orders are stacking up.
Yeah.
Don't be late.
and also the merch store is up and running. We're going to be adding things to that as we go along, but it's working well. So you can visit the website bigwoodsbucks.com and go to the merch store.
Get all your logoed gear. And if there's anybody out there think of something, if you go to the merch store and you say, well, they don't have this or that, if there was something you'd like to see with a Big Woods logo on it, let us know. We can probably make it happen.
Lee's already put a request in for shot glasses. I don't know why, but
Yeah. I just got my new Big Woody Go Cup the other day.
yeah,
Keeps my stuff hot. I like it.
nice. And as always,
Oh, wait a minute. The gloves. Somebody asked about the gloves.
gloves are on the way.
Gloves are on the way. We'll have them by when? And 1st of August?
Yeah, a couple weeks.
Yeah, not too long. We're going to have, within a month, we'll have our new shipment of gloves for the fall, and packs are coming in pretty steady, so we can order that stuff.
And just, check us out on YouTube if you listen to us on there or watch any of the content we're putting out, which we're trying to put out more and more stuff these days. Subscribe and hit the bell so you get notifications. And if you like what you're hearing on iTunes, give us a review.
Geez, that pretty much covered it. He did pretty good with that, didn't he, Lee?
Yeah, he's
It's
all
only,
right.
it's only been
Yeah.
3 years.
You got anything else to say, Lee?
I don't know.
He's playing on his phone again.
Well, I hit the wrong button. Now it's updating, and I didn't really
You
need the
knucklehead.
update. You
I guess it's
knucklehead.
time to go.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. Till next time, good luck on the trail.